Hi everyone, this is Average Gamer. After a run with Articuno, it's time to see how Zapdos will fare in Pokemon FireRed. Being a bit more familiar with the game now, I hope this run will be smoother in terms of less situations where I get lost. I do have to decide on which Pokemon my rival has to start with. Squirtle is definitely out of the question, as Zapdos has an advantage against it in all of my rival fights. This comes down to Bulbasaur and Charmander. Zapdos has super effective moves against Charizard, but that can also be said about Venusaur. Venusaur's only attacking move in the champion fight is Solar Beam, which isn't very effective against Zapdos. Charizard's Flamethrower is going to leave a mark though. In the end, I picked Charizard because Venusaur has a very stally move pool, and that feels like a boring way to end the run. In terms of moves, Zapdos has an interesting pool. It cannot learn Thunderbolt by leveling up, so I have to get the TM for it. I also have no moves that will help it deal with Brock, unlike Articuno who has Powder Snow. Looking at the moves, Zapdos is very poorly equipped to fight any rock ground Pokemon due to ground's immunity to electric moves and limited options against rock types. Steel Wing is an option, but a non-stab move that can miss isn't giving me any confidence. Drill Peck is definitely an amazing option, as I have learned in my Pokemon Go Spearow run. It's a pretty big improvement over Aerial Ace. We can also get Shockwave after beating Surge, which will give a noticeable boost as Thunder Shock is underwhelming after a while. I can certainly see Shockwave and Aerial Ace being primary moves for a while until I get Thunderbolt and Drill Peck. As for the stats, Zapdos is definitely not as bulky as Articuno, with its focus largely being offensive. However, I think its stats are still decent enough that if I want to use something like Rest, it can still work out. Time will tell what I need to do. At least Lorelei should be less of an obstacle when I get to her now. With Zapdos, Brock is going to be a massive obstacle to overcome. His Geodude and Onix are both immune to electric moves, while flying moves aren't very effective. Zapdos simply lacks the move pool this early on to make an impact, especially when Peck is a 35 power move. I knew I needed to grind a lot, but I was unsure how much I had to grind. I fought the optional rival fight west of Viridian City with a level 6 Zapdos, and the battle was a breeze. Pidgey was 2-shotted by Thunder Shock, while Charmander ate 4 Thunder Shocks. Despite this, I needed more levels, as I have learned from the fight against the only trainer in Brock's gym. I couldn't beat a level 10 Geodude, while Brock has a level 12 Geodude and a level 14 Onix. Once Zapdos was level 14, I had a rematch with that trainer in Brock's gym. Camper Lian was defeated this time because Zapdos was at a level where Geodude can't out-damage Zapdos. Sandshrew was quite easy to take down as it wasn't resistant to flying moves. This was sadly the easier fight. It helped me gauge where I'm at, and I went back to grinding some more. My new favorite spot to train was west of Viridian City with all the Sparrows, Rattatas, and Mankeys. It felt like I can grind faster there compared to Viridian Forest, where the bug types tend to give less experience overall. I took on Brock for the first time when Zapdos was level 19. Geodude wasn't an issue since it does very limited damage, and I only needed 4 hits to knock it out. The critical hit was nice to have, as it meant one less turn of Geodude retaliating. Fighting Onix was a grind fest, but with the HP Zapdos boasts and Onix missing a couple of rock tombs, I was able to come out on top. The start was a rough one, but at least Zapdos finally get through the first gym. By the time I arrived in Cerulean City, Zapdos was level 23. I basically fought all the trainers in that gym because I felt like I will need the experience eventually. There were going to be some tough battles coming up. I also needed the money, so there's another incentive to fight more trainers. As for Misty, I one-shotted Staryu with 1 critical hit Thunder Shock. I actually don't know if that critical hit mattered. Seeing how Thunder Shock took Starmie to red health, I believe the critical hit on Staryu didn't matter one bit. Starmie got 1 attack off before I finished it off. Then the rival fight was a breeze, only Charmander got an attack off and it barely did anything. The grinding for Brock has made Zapdos quite invincible for the next little bit of the game due to it being rather over-leveled. The rival fight on the SSN was slightly harder than the last one because Pidgeotto got a quick attack in and Charmeleon got an Ember off. Otherwise, it was quite uneventful on that ship. Unlike my rival fight, the fight with Surge required more planning. Prior to going onto the SSN, I actually called myself a Meowth because it has the ability Pickup. I was very surprised by the lack of berries in Pokemon FireRed. Apparently Pickup is one of the main ways to get berries somewhere reliably, and that's where Meowth came in. I needed berries that can help me heal status if held, which has helped me greatly in Pokemon Gold. Surge's Voltorb was hardly an issue. Pikachu was annoying due to his Thunder Wave and Double Team combo. To deal with the Thunder Wave, I needed a Cherry Berry to heal the paralysis. Raichu uses a similar strategy, but at least it's his last Pokemon. After a few attempts, I figured out that Surge has one full heal. If I can paralyze Raichu twice, then regardless if Zapdos was paralyzed or not, I'll always go first. After a very grindy affair, Zapdos was able to outlast Raichu and claim victory. Erica wasn't a problem at all. I actually fought all the trainers in her gym because I needed the money for Thunderbolt. Coins are expensive, and I needed a lot of money to afford the TM. Luckily, I also learned that Meowth can pick up nuggets from time to time, so there's another source of income available to me. Aerial Ace was all Zapdos needed to one-shot Erica's Pokemon. It's a nice change of pace after the tricky fight against Surge where the fight felt like it took forever. As for the Rocket Hideout, I was worried as I have no easy way of dealing with Giovanni's Onix and Rhyhorn. Luckily, I was at a high enough level where I can brute force through it. I really need an answer to those rock ground types, or I will struggle later. The rival fight at the Pokemon Tower was very one-sided, as Zapdos was nearly twice the level of all of my rivals' Pokemon. I got through the Pokemon Tower faster this time since I actually got some repels. With the Pokeflute in hand, I cut past Snorlax and headed to Fuchsia City. Before that, I finally got enough coins to get Thunderbolt and used it against Koga. Muck and Weezy were tanky enough to take 2 Thunderbolts, but one used Acid Armor and another used Sludge, which did very little. I got another badge and will finish the Safari Zone first before finishing things up in Saffron City. Zapdos was level 51 when I fought my rival in South Co. Other than a quick attack from Pidgeot, the rest of my rival's Pokemon all got one-shotted before inflicting any damage. With Charizard gaining Flying type, it's not a great magic in Zapdos. Ironically, it would be a tougher opponent if it stayed pure Fire type, especially for Articuno. Giovanni put up more of a fight with Rhyhorn, but thankfully Zapdos had enough HP to outlast his entire team. I can definitely see the last fight against Giovanni being tricky since his Nidoking and Nidoqueen have Poison Point while being immune to electric moves. Being poisoned means Zapdos will be on a timer. Anyways, then I get to Sabrina. With the help of a guide, I can reach her in the shortest time possible. Joe-Peck is an extremely powerful physical move that wrecks Sabrina's team. Zapdos being that high level probably didn't help either. With this done, I can head for Blaine to get my 7th badge. The Blaine fight was very straightforward. Thunderbolt until I win. Growlithe and Ponyta fell pretty easily. Rapidash got one-shotted by a critical hit Thunderbolt, which was very nice. Arcanine got decent damage off with a single Fire Blast, but that was all I managed to do. I think the critical hit on Rapidash might have mattered, as Zapdos can't take 2 Fire Blasts very well. As for the last gym fight, my worries were not necessary. I taught Zapdos Steel Wing and it dealt with Rhyhorns quite easily. With leftovers, Zapdos took very little damage in the end and got me the final badge with relative ease. Then I faced my rival who is taking a lesson from Giovanni by getting a Rhyhorn himself. The Rock Blast hurt, but the rest of his Pokemon put up limited resistance. I can admit that I'm not looking forward to dealing with Rhydon later in the champion fight. I thought fighting Lorelei was going to be a lot easier with Zapdos and Articuno. However, my overconfidence resulted in my first attempt being thwarted. Dewgong and Slowbro can both be one-shotted by a Zapdos Thunderbolt. Lapras can take 2 Thunderbolts and during the first attempt, actually used Confuse Ray, which made Zapdos hit itself. Between that and an Ice Beam from Lapras, Zapdos was in yellow health. I then one-shot Jinx, whose Ice Beam then froze Zapdos. The first attempt felt very cursed. For the second attempt, Lapras used Ice Beam instead of Confuse Ray first, and that was all the damage it inflicted. I then used Steel Wing to take out Jinxie in a single hit. Cloyster was then one-shotted. Despite the bad first attempt, I felt better with this attempt compared to Articuno, who needed much more luck to get through that fight. Steel Wing played a huge role here. I didn't really appreciate the move on Articuno, who could deal with the likes of Onix and Rhydons pretty easily. Zapdos can two-shot the 2 Onixes, who did limited damage. I was surprised when the second Onix used a double edge, which did literally nothing. Joe-Peck meanwhile crushed even Machamp, making Bruno a breeze overall. Agatha didn't pose much of a threat either, but that was more due to luck. A critical hit on Arbok was nice since they are surprisingly tanky and hits relatively hard. The second Gengar missing his Hypnosis was nice since my luck with Sleep hasn't been amazing. I'm glad I can get past these two Elite Four smoothly after a rough start with Lorelei. Fighting Lance took me 2 attempts. The first one was close, but a Thunder Wave from one of the Dragonairs resulted in a loss. The fact that Zapdos was slower than the final Dragonite and could be fully paralyzed made that last hurdle difficult to overcome. I decided that Cherry Berry was worth more than Leftovers as the paralysis was far more threatening. The second attempt saw Zapdos with 171 HP fighting the Dragonite. The Dragonite first got off a Safeguard followed by a Hyper Beam. Luckily for me, Lance could not use full restore while Dragonite was recharging, so I got the W with 76 HP. Onward to the champion fight. The first attempt against the champion highlighted the issue I was facing. I hadn't expected it, but Rhydon was a much bigger threat than I had anticipated. His 2 moves, Rock Tomb and Scary Face, were the main issues. I never thought I would see a day when Scary Face becomes a threatening move, but that day has arrived. With Rock Tomb lowering speed by 1 stage and Scary Face lowering speed by 2 stages, Rhydon could potentially make Zapdos slower than all of my rivals' Pokemon, including Rhydon itself. That meant Zapdos would take hits every turn, and despite it being a legendary bird, it could only take so much punishment. I needed a way to deal with Rhydon swiftly before I could lower Zapdos' speed by too much. The champion fight took many tries, but I eventually got my winning strategy. I'm not fond of it, but I really don't want to grind more, and Zapdos was indeed capable of winning this fight. My answer to Rhydon was Double Team, which I replaced Shockwave with. I set up 5 double teams against Pidgeot, who landed 1 sand attack and a bunch of aerial aces. The aerial aces did practically nothing, but that 1 sand attack was worrying. Against Rhydon, I just spammed Steel Wing, hoping my double team paid off. Of course, Rhydon landed a Rock Tomb that took Zapdos to yellow health and lowered speed by 1 stage. Luckily, that was the only Rock Tomb it landed. I wasn't sure if any of my rivals' remaining Pokemon could outspeed Zapdos as a result. Alakazam was next and it not only outsped Zapdos but also put up Reflect. That, along with the earlier sand attack, made the fight last longer than it should have. It was a lot of both Zapdos and Alakazam missing their attacks until Zapdos finally landed the Drill Peck to make Alakazam faint. Executor tried to use Sleep Powder but it missed, my 2 Drill Pecks didn't and I knocked it out. Gyarados and Charizard both fell to a single Thunderbolt. Charizard did surprise me with its aerial ace, knowing that Zapdos was really hard to hit. This was a tricky fight, but I really couldn't figure out any other solution other than Double Team. Zapdos beat the Elite Four and Champion at level 66. Other than my rival's Rhydon, it did surprisingly well. Having played both Articuno and Zapdos, I felt that they were best in their own ways. Their coverage moves made them excel in one area while suffering in another. Zapdos struggled a lot against Brock while Articuno suffered at the hands of Misty. Articuno couldn't handle Lorelei very easily while Zapdos struggled against Rhydon, which forced me to utilize Double Team, a very cheesy option. Despite finishing everything at a lower level, Zapdos doesn't feel better. It's different, but I can't say it's better than Articuno. The 2 legendary birds feel on par and doing well in their own respect. I wonder how the Moltres run will go. That's it for the video. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and maybe even subscribe. Thank you.